So I want to hear like what it was like your childhood, how you got involved in journalism, how you pitched the idea of the show, growing up in Fyffe, a town of 1,000 people, same town that I grew up in, and you got into journalism, and now you've got your own show, and like you've got over 20,000 followers on social media. Everyone in Alabama knows who you are. And I think what will be really interesting is what I found is audiences love, like this didn't work and this didn't work and this didn't work and this didn't work, but then this worked. So it's almost like three setbacks for every victory. And like audiences really love to hear those stories because that's the human experience. Is there's always like 9 failures for every 1 victory. And a lot of times what people do is they just see the victories. Like we publicize the victories, right, and they don't see the failures. And a lot of times people feel like, they're not doing a very good job of life, Right. But if they heard the entire story, I think most people in journalism would love to be in shoes as similar as yours, like not exactly doing a show called Absolutely Alabama, right? Because they may be from another state, but they would love to have a show and have the kind of attention that you're getting. So I would just like to hear the entire story.
Well, it really is one of those things where almost meant to be type things where, as you say, when you have something that happens and you think, wow, this is really terrible. And then you look back and you go, oh, well, if that hadn't happened, then this wouldn't have happened. So you're right. I mean, you and I, who would have thought 2 Fyffe guys would be sitting here with cameras talking to each other about their life stories, but it happens. So yeah, I was born not too very far, 9 miles from where we're sitting right now drinking coffee on Sand Mountain. I was born in Fort Payne. My dad worked for a little place down the South Y, the IGA. He was a butcher when I was born. Come home from the Navy and gone through a couple of jobs like a lot of people did after World War II. Here's an interesting story since we're being geographical. Not too far from here, there's a place called the Strand, which is a hamburger place. And next door to that was Fluids Dry Goods. And my mom was working at Hewitt's Dry Goods. She graduated from what was then DeKalb High School. There was only one high school in the county. My dad came home from the Navy and he had outgrown all of his clothes. Uncle Vernon took him to town because he was the only one who had a car. And my grandparents lived over here in the Shavings community, right outside Rainsville, where we're sitting. So that's a long way to go to Fort Payne to buy new clothes. My dad went in and my mom measured him for his trousers and said he would be back that afternoon to pick him up, and he asked her for a date.
Wow.
And so that's how they met. Was she fitted him and sold him his first pair of trousers when he got home from World War II. And she accepted. So he came back out to the car and told my uncle, said, I just met the girl I'm going to marry. And in those days, as you know, boys from Sand Mountain didn't marry girls from Fort Payne. Okay. But it happened, and so they married, and I came along a few years later, 1953, and then I had 2 other sisters who were born, curiously enough, both of them graduated from Fort Payne High School, and even though I was born in Fort Payne, I never went to Fort Payne school a day in my life. And then in 10th grade, my dad bought a little, what we used to call, when you and I were growing up, the dime store at Fyffe, the 5, and 10. And he operated that for many years. So I graduated from high school at Fyffe and went to Huntington College in Montgomery. Our youngest daughter, Rebecca, I'm getting ahead of myself, but she graduated. She became the head cheerleader at Huntington College. So it was kind of a circuitous journey there. And so I transferred to the University of Alabama and got a degree in broadcast film and also a minor in journalism.
You majored in broadcast film with a minor in journalism at the University of Alabama.
Right, correct. And to back up just a bit, I was working for my dad at Fyffe, and someone came in from the radio station. They were selling my dad advertising, and they said, we need somebody to work on the weekends. I think I was 17 at WZOB Radio. Again, 9 miles from where you and I are sitting now. And so his name was Jess Moore. He was the chief engineer, and he was also the salesman. So I came down and met with Steve Porter and Terry Patton. Terry was general manager, and Steve Porter was the program director, and got the job. Apparently, the qualification bar was pretty low. So I got my first job in radio, working at WZOB in Fort Payne. I was working, signing the radio station off on Saturday nights, sundown, sun up to sundown, and then coming back and signing the radio station on 6 o'clock on Sunday morning. And my main job was putting the preachers on and off and making sure they got on and off on time and collecting their money.
Yeah.
Those were my two mandates. And so
You got to pay the bills.
got to pay the bill. So I was the collector and the keeper of the flame there, and so I worked at WROS in Scottsboro one summer during summer break, and I was still working for my dad all this time, coming back and forth home and working for him on the weekend from Tuscaloosa. And so I was, in those days, country music wasn't that popular.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody wanted to work at the rock and roll station. It was WTBC in Tuscaloosa. And Knox Haygood, who was the chairman of the department, broadcast at the university, sticks his head in the door one day and says, "Anybody here know anything about country music?" And I said, "Yeah, I do. I work at a country radio station in Fort Payne." And he said, "Well, go see Clyde Price at WACT in Tuscaloosa." So I went down there, and Clyde hired me to do weekends at WACT
As a DJ.
as a DJ, right, playing country music, because I was the only one who knew anything about country music.
Yeah.
And so I went to work there, graduated, went back, got my master's degree while I was still working in radio there in Tuscaloosa, worked at University Television, writing press releases. And then I also had an opportunity. Channel 33 was this little small CBS station there in Tuscaloosa, and they were hiring. And so I got an interview there, and they were looking for someone to do sports and weather. They were just starting a 10 o'clock newscast. So I wound up eventually getting the job doing sports. And then they said, "We're going to start a weekend. We need somebody to do weather." So I started doing weather. One thing led to another in Tuscaloosa. A guy that I was working with there wound up going to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and he hired me to come do weather up there. In the meantime, I'm taking distance learning classes in meteorology from Mississippi State, and worked there. Eventually, he moved to Austin, Texas. He hired me to come to Austin, and while I was in Austin, I was doing weekend weather, and then I also was called into his office, the general manager's office. So you asked, how did I launched this idea? I didn't. In fact, they called me in and they said, "We get so many complaints in the TV business about all the negative stories that are told." So he said, "We want you to do positive stories." And so Craig Millard was the general manager, and Rob Martin, who's the news director, said, "We're going to call this series Positively Texas." So I did that for 3 years.
All right.
My wife and kids were still living in Alabama, and I was commuting from Texas to Alabama. Yeah.
On the weekends?
Well,
When you
every
could.
other
When you
weekend.
could.
Yeah, when I could afford to come home.
Yeah.
And so I had 4 girls. So one of them had either just gotten married, just made captain of cheerleaders, just about to have a baby or something. So my wife stayed there with them and to help raise them or to keep raising them. And so the opportunity came at Channel 6 at BRC in Birmingham. And when I came for the interview there, and this goes to your point that you never know how things are going to work out. Because I thought having to commute, be separated from my family was a terrible thing. Well, they had an opening for a weekend weatherman, meteorologist in Birmingham. So I came back, and it wasn't through my meteorological skills necessarily that I got the job. I also attached to my resume tape my series, Positively Texas, which just so happened the lady who was the news director at the time, her name was Peggy Carpenter,
Okay.
and she was born and raised in Buffalo Gap, Texas.
All right.
And so that Positively Texas was what grabbed her. Peggy hired me to come back and do weekend weather at Channel 6, and she said, "I want you to produce a series that we're going to call it Absolutely
And
Alabama."
what year was this?
This was 1997.
So you've been doing this since
21 years.
1997.
I've been doing Absolutely Alabama since 1997.
And all of those videos are on the website?
No, not all of the
Not all,
videos
but
are on the
most
website. The web hadn't been invented when I
Right,
started
right,
doing this.
right.
So then we started doing those. We were bought by a company called Raycom.
Uh-huh.
And so they made the decision that they would like to see it expanded instead of just a 2.5 minute story inside the newscast into a 30-minute program.
Yeah.
And so we did that for 5 years. So we do have those available on the website. So we did a 30-minute program. Mike Tucker and I produced, directed, wrote, edited, shot the whole thing. 30-minute show. We started doing that 6 years ago.
6 years ago.
Yeah, and then Raycom made the decision because of the nature of the business, the direction of the business, whatever, that they would compress it back into just a single 2.5 minute story that runs inside the newscast.
Yeah.
But the good news is that the show still airs in reruns. Still airs in Birmingham and Montgomery on Channel 12, Channel 6 in Birmingham. It airs on Channel 34, Fox 34 in Dothan.
And what website can they go and look at past episodes?
AbsolutelyAlabama.com.
AbsolutelyAlabama.com. They can go back and look at all the past episodes.
Yeah.
How many episodes do you think are on there?
Oh gosh, I know 5.
5 years worth.
Yeah, we did 5 years worth of shows, and we did 3 shows, four stories in each show. So do the math.
Wow.
And we did
So
those.
how many years were you in the industry before you got your break to host the show?
Well, Positively Texas, I've probably been doing maybe 30 years.
You've been in journalism,
20
broadcast journalism for 25 years,
Yeah.
and then you got the Texas gig.
Right.
And then how long were you doing that before you got the Alabama
Well, I
gig?
got 3 years, so
3
that would have been starting roughly 1994. But you got to remember, this goes all the way back
Yeah.
to 1970, 71,
Yeah.
when I got that first job at
Right.
WZOB Radio. And I guess the thing that always hits me, that always occurs to me, is when I was a kid growing up, and we'd move the longest I ever went to one school at one time was 3 years. And that was to Fyffe, 10th, 11th, 12th grade.
Yeah.
Other than that, I moved every couple of years. Now, I actually lived longer growing up in Opp, but that was, 3 years and then 2 years. So consecutive years. So that was always terrible that you were always having to move, from Fort Payne to Jasper to Clayton to Opp to Attala to Ellick City. We lived in Ellick City for a year. And so I thought that was really terrible. But as it turns out, then you fast forward 40 years and you get an opportunity to do a series called Absolutely Alabama.
Yeah.
And I know, Alabama basically from one end to the other because I've lived
Yeah.
here for a lot of my life. So the thing that I thought was really bad turned out to be a blessing.
So some people look at your show and be like, wow, I wish I could get that job. But they just say, wow, and this is what I hear a lot. You're so lucky. And it's like, wait a minute now. I've been doing this for over 25 years and then I got a break.
Yeah.
I didn't just pop up and say, 6 months later, I've got 20,000 followers on social media.
No.
This has been going on a while.
I didn't walk out the door at WZOB after that first weekend
Yeah.
and have Absolutely Alabama
Yeah.
spring full bloom from the earth.
Right.
It takes a while, and there, like I say, there are setbacks.
Yeah.
There are opportunities that you think are great opportunities. They don't come along, or they don't work out, or you don't get the gig, and then then this happens. So I guess that is those are the two big overriding lessons, I guess, if I've learned anything, is that things that appear to be really bad sometimes turn out to be a blessing. They really do. And then, you have to be ready. I think it was Disraeli who said the real secret of success in life is for a man to be ready when his opportunity comes. So a lot of times it's just having that opportunity and being prepared and taking advantage of it, and take advantage of the opportunity when it comes.
Yeah, train. When the opportunity, be ready to go.
Yeah.
Jump on it. When you see the opportunity, pounce. Yeah.
So, I don't know. I used to run marathons. I was never very fast, never a sprinter, but marathons I could finish because even though it didn't take it took me a long time, but I could finish that marathon, but I was never a sprinter. I've always been a marathon.
Right. You've seen so many things and you've interviewed so many people and you've covered so many stories. Are there maybe two, like if you're sitting around, do you have kids and grandkids?
Got 4 girls, and then I had to stop count the grandkids. 5, 6, about to have the 7th grandkid. Yeah.
So if you're sitting around a fire and they said, Granddaddy, tell us some stories. What are maybe like, can you think of 2 or 3 just, or maybe we can just start off with one story that you would tell around the campfire?
I'll tell you one that sticks out that I did a long, long time ago. There was a guy named Clay Dyer. And this is one of those lesson learned. Clay Dyer is a professional bass fisherman. He's from over in northwest Alabama, Franklin County. And Clay Dyer makes his living on the pro bass tour, which is not that unusual. A lot of guys make a lot of money as a professional bass fisherman. But Clay Dyer has no arms and legs.
Wow.
And he drives his own boat, drives his own truck, baits his own hook, does everything for himself, throws the rod by holding the rod here under his chin and reeling it with the point of his chin. It's an incredible story, you know? And that's one of those things where I can't wait for somebody to tell me, I can't do that. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. You just don't have the dedication or the will or the drive to do it. So Clay Dyer, always above all the rest, sticks out.
Wow.
You know, so I guess that's number one. You know, that you'd have to go a long way to top Clay.
Yeah.
The only thing Clay Dyer can't do as a professional bass fisherman is snap his own life jacket on. Because I mean, he arms. And so he has to get somebody to do that. So I tell people, if you think, you know, life's not treating you exactly right and you don't have anything to be thankful for, you can thank the Lord for your fingers.
Yeah.
You know, things we take for granted. So, but I think it's not so much the stories, and I enjoy meeting people, but it's the places we get to see, you know, from Lookout Mountain to the Gulf of Mexico, you know, and to have people come up to you and say, wow, I didn't know we had mountains in Alabama, or I didn't know we had such beautiful beaches in Alabama, you know, or I never knew that Jesse Owens, the most famous Olympian in history, was born in Alabama, you know, or, you know, any number of things like that. I never knew that place or that person had Alabama ties. So that's the stories that I like the best.
Good. That's good. You got anything you want to say?
Yeah. Oh, man.
You got anything you want to?
Oh, are y'all done? Because I was just going to tell you this framing. I guess the chair got moved a little bit, but you're right on the corner.
Am I? Well,
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
I didn't know if y'all were going.
Yeah. We're done.
Okay.
We're done. I'm done.
Yeah. Let's do it.